Hey everybody, what's going on? Thank you for joining me today for this special live stream. We're going to be talking all about Nigerian fraud. And I've brought on a special guest to kind of help me discuss this because this is a thing that happens quite a bit. My special guest today is probably the one person on earth who receives more scam emails than I do. And he looks at them all day because that's his full-time job. And so I want to introduce to you a senior threat researcher from Agari. His name is Ronnie Tokazowski. Ronnie, welcome to the Pleasant Green Show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing me on.
Glad that you could be here. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to be talking all about cyber fraud, email fraud, and specifically Nigerian fraud, because that's something that you work a whole lot in. And you may know I have a lot of subscribers that are from Nigeria. A lot of them really appreciate what I do, the content that I put out, but a lot of them don't like me because they think that I'm giving Nigeria a bad name. And I don't try to do that. I just try to tell stories as they come in, and it turns out that a lot of the scams that I encounter happen to originate from Nigeria. And I want you to help talk about this a little bit. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of scams in email and cyber fraud. Let's talk a little bit about what percentage of these scams come from Nigeria? What kind of effect is it having on the folks in Nigeria who aren't scammers? So talk a little bit about that. Before we do that, maybe you should tell us a little bit more about who you are. I tried to introduce you a little bit, but maybe you should tell us more about your background and what you do and all that. And then we can talk about Nigeria. So
cool.
Who are you?
So I'm Ronnie. Nice to meet you. So my name is Ronnie Tokazowski. A lot of people know me under the Twitter handle of iHeartMalware. One of the things I do is I'm a senior threat researcher at a company called Agari, and what we do is we specialize in business email compromise intelligence. And what that is that's a way to say that some organizations will see emails to say, hey, are you in the office? Are you on desk? Go ahead and do a wire transfer for me. And what we've done is we've traced a lot of that back as an industry over the last 5 years, and we found out that a lot of that does tie back to Nigerian fraud. I know some people were upset by saying the word Nigerian fraud, and I want to help set the record straight by straight up saying I am not saying that all Nigerians are fraudsters. Just so it happens that this group that we're tracking, a lot of the Yahoo boys, that's where they come from. In my past, I've also done work on Russian cybercrime, as well as a lot of Chinese advanced persistent threat attacks back in the day. So I used to do a lot of work on APT1 was one of the groups I did a lot of tracking on. I did work on the Dyer family of malware, and then most recently I've been tracking Nigerian fraud. And when we say Nigerian fraud, it's not something that I'm saying, again, all fraudsters not all Nigerians are fraudsters. It just so happens to be that the Yahoo boys, who we do a lot of tracking of, who's doing a lot of the harm to people on the ground, they just so happen to be people from Nigeria. And again, most of it ties back to the Yahoo boys and ties back to different groups such as that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How big of a problem is it? I release some of these videos where people pretend to be, they pretend to be CIA agents, or they pretend to be rich old ladies who want to give away their inheritance. And a lot of the comments that I see are, do people really fall for this stuff? So from what you're seeing, do people really fall for this stuff? How big of a problem is this Nigerian fraud 419 stuff?
So I would say from the industry and the actual money that's lost, one of the places I like to point at too for metrics is IC3, and they're the reporting agency of the FBI that has complaints come in. It's the Internet Cyber Crime and Complaint Center, if I remember the acronym right. 3-letter agencies like acronyms for whatever reason. But as for the size of this, I've been tracking business email compromise specifically since it was $1.6 billion in fraud. We're now up to almost $30 billion in fraud over the last 5 years. And to put that into perspective, when you actually look at all of the other cybercrime, including things like ransomware, Trojans, botnets, other things like that, BEC and Nigerian fraud has taken the biggest piece of the pie. And when I'm talking about Nigerian fraud, that's including romance scams, check fraud, money laundering, account takeovers, vendor email compromise, business email compromise, and all these other things that get encapsulated into that. Because one of the things that we've noticed is that with a lot of fraudsters who are doing this, they're not doing just this one type of crime. They're doing multiple types of crime, and it overlaps into many different pieces.
Yeah. One of the saddest things that I see, I get a lot of emails from people that say, I just lost $10,000 in a romance scam, or I lost, $5,000 in a check scam. But sometimes what's equally as sad are the Nigerian youth or adults who will email me and say that they can't find work, like a Fiverr or Upwork. These are talented people who just want to make a living online in the gig economy, and they can't do it because people see, oh, you're from Nigeria.
Yep.
Yeah, never mind. I'm not going to do work with you. And so that to me is equally as sad. And so this is a problem that we got to fix. And I want you to talk about this cool thing that you are trying to get going over there in Nigeria. Tell us about what you're trying to set up and what you're kind of looking for funding to do.
Yeah, so one of the things that, as I've been tracking this fraud over the last 5 years, one of the things that we started to see is that the amount of people involved in this fraud is absolutely rampant. I work closely with law enforcement on a lot of these cases. I want to say we're up to almost like 600 arrests, potentially over 800 over the last couple of years on this type of fraud. And it's something where the fraud isn't going away. It's still there. So I've really got the wheels turning. I'm like, okay, how do we actually start solving this and making it to where not only, and it's something where trying to figure out, okay, we can either arrest all the people or actually start fighting it from a different angle. So someone that approached me with a problem, and again, it was something I was kind of thinking about. And what he said was he wanted to make a think tank out in Nigeria, and he wanted to be able to start training the youth in Nigeria to help bring them up to say, hey, here's these jobs that you can work on remotely. Here's these tech skills that you can have. And the idea is to start making really good job opportunities for the youth in Nigeria. And that's the biggest problem right now is when you actually look at unemployment in Nigeria, and you specifically the youth between ages 15 to 35, the unemployment rate is upwards of 50 to 55%. And here in the United States, we have protections against unemployment fraud or against unemployment, whereas you don't necessarily have the same protections in Nigeria for that. So a lot of the youth over there who's trying to just make a living and be able to get a job to feed our families, just like me and you, it's something where they don't have those same opportunities. So that's what we want to try and do, is make it to where the youth are able to start having those opportunities. They are able to start making a living, because if you have the choice to actually do a decent job and be able to survive, as opposed to becoming a fraudster, my opinion is that those people will want to do good and want to not become a fraudster. Because again, it's something where a lot of the people in Nigeria hate the Yahoo boys. They really don't like the perception that they've given them. So it's something where we're trying to start turning that mindset upside down to actually start reaching back. There's a lot of other organizations as well. I know here at Agari, we were trying to look at that and everything too, to make it to where we start fighting the evil of the fraudsters. You also have other groups such as Paxful, who are doing a lot of good in Nigeria too, who are actually trying to reinvest back into the Nigerian economy to put those opportunities out there so that people don't have to become fraudsters and they can actually make a decent living and be able to be successful and survive.
So you're trying to raise a couple $1,000s to kind of help this individual over there kind of start this think tank that gets that gives young kids opportunities and ways to use their smarts for legitimate purposes.
Yep. Yeah. As part of the super chat, we're looking to raise about $4,000 for him, and once we get that money, it'll be going towards helping develop that and helping develop that think tank, so he can start doing that and start making those opportunities for the youth. And that's something that we're really trying to do here, is to put the good foot forward and know, again, not all Nigerians are scammers. We're trying to show that, and we're trying to say, hey, let's actually try and do something good for them. So yeah. So that's why I want to say right now that we've got a couple subscribers who have been watching and done the super chat thing, and I want to highlight them if I can. Okay.
I'm going to go and try to find their names and put them up on the screen and say thank you, because any penny that we raise here today, we're going to talk for the next 30 minutes or so, but any money that we raise with a super chat, we're going to give it to you, Ronnie. We're going to give it to your friend over there in Nigeria who's trying to start this little think tank to educate young kids so they don't become Yahoo boys and go and scam Americans or people in the UK or whatever they do. And so thanks for Ninja Carp. Thanks for your $2. We'll try to highlight some of these other folks that have done a super chat. But if you have a question for Ronnie, if you have a question for me, and you wants to talk about that a little bit, then go ahead and use that super chat thing to get your question to the top of the list, and we'll answer it for you. But once again, we're wanting to help the reputation of Nigerian. So if you want to do a little super chat and donate a couple bucks, that's all going to go and help this cause that we're trying to get going over there. So would love to have your questions if you have any. But until we get a question, Ronnie, maybe just talk about what's the most common thing. You think it's romance scams, or what's the most common Nigerian scam that you're seeing a lot of?
So for me, the perspective I see, it's across the board, and I would say I wouldn't necessarily say the most common one is romance scams, but I would say that's among the most devastating. And the reason I say that is because the way that those scams work is you have somebody who is alone trying to find a relationship, and what they'll do is they may go onto a dating website in order to try and just build a relationship with somebody. And when you have somebody come in and say the nice right words to that person, they're going to be more likely to fall for them. And it's something where with the attackers, what they have is they'll use what they call scripts and formats, which are bodies of text that they can copy paste from one person to the other. And they may have some 15, 20, 30 different victims that they're hitting all at the same time. Once they build that relationship with the victim, what they'll do is they will go ahead and continue building that relationship with them. They may send them pictures. They may have them start cashing checks. They may have them open gift card accounts. We had one instance where the scammer had sent a check for $16,000 from a victim company to the romance scam victim. And what the romance victim did was they went and deposited the check, cashed the check. The scammers wanted them to send the $15,000 cash through Bitcoin back to the scammers. That victim didn't have a Bitcoin ATM close to them, so they actually sent the $15,000 cash in a FedEx box to another victim. And that was a group that we were tracking that was called Exaggerated Lion. And they made very heavy use of romance victims, and that's what a lot of these scammers will do, is they'll use the romance victims to do their bidding. I've seen cases where some of the victims have been in the scheme for over a decade. I was in Las Vegas at DEF CON last year, as a matter of fact, and got to talking with one of the Uber drivers, and I said, hey, I do a lot of work in Nigerian fraud. She's like, really? That's interesting. She's like, I was a victim. I'm like, tell me your story. So in talking with her, it turns out she was in there for over a decade, and it started out as a business relationship. And with that business relationship, it eventually turned into a romantic relationship because her husband was abusive, and the person who was in that relationship was showing her the love and affection. So fast forward, she ended up losing $250,000. She had lost her family. She had gotten divorced. She lost her home, lost her entire livelihood. And the whole reason she was an Uber driver was because that's the only way she could have made money. I've had other cases where the victim was
Thank you,
talking.
Rhonda Ennis. Sorry to cut you off. I'm just thanking Rhonda for donating $10.
Oh yeah, thank you, Rhonda. But yeah, I've had other cases where the scammers would run the victim so far that the scammer actually told the victim, or no, where the victim told the scammer, hey, I tried to commit suicide because of you, and my mother had me committed. I went to go, and I told her all about you and everything, and the scammer came back, it's like, no, you know I'm always real, and sent a picture, and even after she told him that she tried to commit suicide, the scammer was like, oh, here, and go cash some more checks. So it's an absolute mess with the devastation that happens just on the romance side. And that's not even starting to touch like the real estate fraud. That's not that where you have people who will go and be buying a home and lose all their money for that. And it's, again, new home buyers just trying to buy a home. And the scammers are like, oh, this is funny. I'm going to go steal this money from you because for this reason or that reason. So unfortunately, there's a lot of money being lost. And a lot of the scammers really think that that there really isn't a lot of damage going on, but unfortunately, a lot of people have both lost their lives and lost their entire livelihoods because of these scammers, and it's absolutely devastating listening to some of these stories from the victims.
That's one of the saddest videos that I've ever had to make. Is I made it. I did a video on a romance scam, and it was a guy who lost thousands of dollars, but he also lost a part of his heart.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was in love with someone, and so it was just a double whammy.
Yeah. And it's very much of that double whammy because, again, you have this person who's emotionally vulnerable and just trying to find a relationship, who's lonely, and then they will go and be in this relationship for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then now that relationship that they were in, everything that they know is now fake. They lost this money, and it's seriously like they take a piece of their heart away. And it's absolutely devastating, and those people are now left absolutely emotionally confused. And I know another question that came in was on the people who were using the military romance scams, and they're using the military uniforms for that. And again, very much one of those things that's part of it is you'll have actors who will go and use people who are in military uniforms to say, hey, I'm alone overseas, go ahead and send me money. And unfortunately, people fall for it.
Yeah, I want to ask you about one other question about romance scams. First, I want to say thanks to Profiling Evil. They give us $10. This is one of my new favorite YouTube channels. If you like true crime, if you like following along on like modern true crime, and you wanna kind of get commentary from some retired police detectives on what's going on with true crime and all these cases like the Daybell case, that's an account you should follow. So thanks for the $10. Profiling.
I actually made a note for that because I'm gonna go ahead and follow them. My boss is former FBI, and for him, he very much loves profiling the actors.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll definitely be passing that over to him too.
And I've already reached out to them to do some collaboration videos here in the next little bit that I think that my fans will like. But you found something really interesting on my last video. There was a woman who said that she was this woman who was dying, and she needed somebody to give her inheritance to. She picked me, of all people, to give her inheritance to. It's a scam, obviously, but she wanted me to, or her lawyer wanted me to wire money to her, to his administrative assistant in Michigan. And I found out there was someone in Michigan that was like laundering money for this scammer in Ghana. And I couldn't figure out, why is somebody in Michigan laundering money for the guy in Ghana? I made the video and I didn't really answer why, but I reached out to you and I said, what do you think about this? And you found out something really interesting, and I don't want to like say your name or anything because I think she's a victim. But tell me what you found out when you dug into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and if it's a case I remember, I want to say that was also a romance victim.
Correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's the way a lot of the scam works, is that your scammers who are running the romance victims will actually have the romance victims create bank accounts. They'll create companies. They will be using them to wire money from one place to another. And for a lot of the victims, again, they actually think they're in this relationship. So that, and looking at that person who was her name and everything, I very much think she was a romance victim in that case. And again, a lot of the scammers, especially again, going back to the Nigerian fraudsters and the Yahoo boys, they will use romance scammers to try and have them send money from one place to another. And the reason they do that is because when it comes to wiring money back and forth to Nigeria, a lot of companies make it to where you can't do that. It's very reminiscent of the time where you tried to send Western Union money over to Nigeria. It was virtually impossible for you to do that because Western Union and other places like that are like, we're not going to be doing business out there. So a lot of the Yahoo boys have had to try and figure out new ways in order to cash out, as they call it, or essentially moving money from one place to another, to where they can use these multiple layers and multiple steps in order to get money from that one victim to that account, to that account, to that account, to that account, to finally to where they can have the money in their pockets.
Yeah, because I try to send money through Western Union for good reasons, right? I try to like fund charity over there, and Western Union keeps shutting me down. And so obviously they got to find other reasons. But are you thinking that my scammer buddy, my lawyer scammer, was using this woman in Michigan, like he was pretending to be her boyfriend and saying, "Oh, hey, honey, there's somebody who wants to send you money. Can you get it and then put it in a Bitcoin machine for me?" Like, is that what you think is happening there?
So the way that they work is usually you'll have multiple scammers in the scene. So let's say that you have the person who's saying that they're from the law office trying to talk to you. So they may be saying, "Hey, I want you to wire this money to this person here." You usually have a second victim who will be the one that will have the money and be working with that victim, and these two people may be working together, so that the person that you're seeing on the law side and the person that the romance victim is engaging with may be two different people. It could also be the same person on that. So with those people doing that work back and forth, it's something where they try and make it to where it's very intermixed on how they do that. Going back to the woman who attempted to commit suicide, in her case, she was talking with three people. She was talking with the person that she thought she was in a relationship. She was talking with somebody from the CIA, and then I think an officer. And in all three of those cases, they were not the three separate people. It was all the same scammer. And for her, she was very paranoid and delusional about people watching her, and she was rightfully so to be paranoid on that. Because what happened with her was the scammer had actually hacked her email account months before then, was watching all the emails coming through, and was able to say those different things about that and everything.
Crazy. Hey, thanks for Austin. Thanks for the $10.
Yeah, and that's the other interesting thing too, is that again with the romance victims, many of them are are groomed to the point where they actually think they're in a relationship.
Mhm.
And even when the cops go and talk to them, they're like, no, I'm actually in this relationship with this person. Or in the one case that we saw, the victim will actually tell the scammer, hey, I had the cop come here. And the scammer will be like, no, that's a fake cop. Don't talk to them. Don't give them any information about me. And a lot of the victims are actually groomed to evade law enforcement, which makes the investigations much more difficult and much more time consuming.
Yeah. I want to get into a very interesting topic with you. But first, I've got to say thanks to Tim Sessions and Spencer and who was that other person who donated? Alicia. Thanks for your stickers and your super chats. Just a reminder, we don't think that all Nigerians are scammers. We think that some people are, and it's causing a real big problem for the honest, hardworking people in Nigeria. So that's why we're raising money today with these super chats. Ronnie's trying to start a little think tank over there that can educate young Nigerian youth to use their talents for good, because it sounds like these Yahoo boys will just recruit you. They'll give you a free laptop and they'll say, "Hey, you want to make some money? Come join our team."
Yep.
And that's the try to thing that we're trying to stop. We're trying to create other opportunities to use your skills and make money. I mean, these people have figured out how to impersonate lawyers and FBI agents. They can figure out how to make money in real ways, and many of them do, which is awesome. I mean, I've hired Nigerians to make films for me, to design graphics for me. There's a lot of talent over there, so we're just trying to clear the air. Ronnie, I want to talk to you today about voodoo.
Okay.
Tell me some of the crazy stuff that you've seen about the culture over there, and how they and how that plays a role. And do they really think that rituals and sacrifices and that kind of thing can improve their scamming success? Like, what have you seen? Tell us some crazy stuff that we need to know.
Yeah, so believe it or not, and again, I had to like triple check myself, my work, because like a lot of times, like I'll be working this stuff, I'm like, there is no way that this is how it works, because I'm used to staring at like binary bits and bytes and malware and everything. I'm like, voodoo? I'm like, okay, it doesn't make sense. So the way that works is, when it comes to the Yahoo boys, a lot of them will use different types of voodoo or blood rituals in order to get different types of blessings. And in some cases, again, feel free to just go search for voodoo and Yahoo boys. There's plenty of articles out there for it. But there was actually one case where a couple of the people had tried to sacrifice their grandmother and actually murdered her as part of that ritual. You also have mothers of Yahoo boys who will do different things in order to make a Yahoo Boy Plus, in order to bless some of these people who are doing this type of fraud. So it's a very twisted way of thinking, to where that you can actually either sacrifice people or do these different types of blood rituals in order to actually get yourself more money. Another thing that very much plays into this, and again, that level of voodoo, are confraternities in Nigeria. Some places in Nigeria have actually called them cults. And there are a lot of confraternities in Nigeria that also are playing in the different types of cybercrime. Some of those have also dabbled in things like drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, of course. But again, a lot of the fraud isn't just cybercrime. They're also in a lot of bigger things too. And yeah, very much a lot of crazy things that happen on that side, with just how far a lot of these people will go just to make $1, or just to bless themselves in order to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and use this money blessing in order to get this amount of money for this, that, and the other.
Wild. Okay, just a reminder, if you have a question you want to ask Ronnie or myself, throw it in the chat. If you want to have a higher chance of getting an answer, there's that super chat thing that works. But we also have some questions that were submitted on my YouTube community tab. And I've got some in little banners here that I'll try to display. So we'll just kind of go through those one by one as we have time. But I just wanted to get everybody's feedback, because as you can see, I got a new setup. So give me a thumbs up if you like my new setup. This is a production company here where I live called Circa 3 that's let me try this out. And if you guys like it, maybe we'll do more stuff.
You got a thumbs up from me. I mean, the couch is good and it's classic, and you'll have to go back to the couch every now and then. But yeah, personally, I like the setup.
All right. First question that we are going to get is, why isn't government doing more to stop them?
So are you talking about the U.S. government, or are we talking about the Nigerian government, or are we talking both? Because both have different answers.
Well, let's get both answers.
Okay. So specific to the U.S. government, again, a lot of that comes back to when you go and talk to a victim, it's something where your victim may not necessarily be able to tell the whole story. So now you have a law enforcement officer who has to go and uncover how a lot of this stuff works. I know that a lot of law enforcement is actually looking at this stuff. One of the groups that we saw doing a lot of things over the last couple months was a group that we call Scattered Canary on the Agari side. And what they were doing was they were doing unemployment fraud. So they would go and apply for different unemployment benefits here in the United States. And we know of at least 13 states they hit. They also hit Guam. And Washington and Maryland thankfully got money reversed, which was $500 million for each one. So that was $1 billion that came back. The thing that sucks with that is all of that money that the scammers were like, oh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be cashing out. Some of them are like, oh, we're going to be cashing out all the way through December because Trump said that they're extending unemployment benefits. For the scammers that are doing that, and if you know anybody doing that, you're now stealing money. You're now stealing money out of the mouths of needy Americans who are now out of work. So you guys are really jerks for that. So if any of you guys know people who are doing that, straight up tell them. Ronnie said you're being a jerk on that. For the government stuff and everything, I know a lot of U.S. government is looking at that, and there is a lot of investigation going on for that. Unfortunately, I can't comment on much further than that, but just know that there are things that are happening on that. Specific to the Nigerian government, that's a whole nother ballgame. So I'll go ahead and use the example of the arrest for a hacker going under the name of Mumfa. He was very much a high-profile arrest that happened in Nigeria. And he was arrested for 100 billion naira, or I think it was 100 billion naira in fraud, which roughly translates to about $85 million here in the U.S. Very long story short, he eventually got let out on bail for, I think it was like 33 million naira, which equates to about $85,000, or no, it was $250,000. And by doing that, and by being able to get bail, he was able to go out, be released, and he's now back in Dubai. So it's something where Mumfa, who was doing a lot of fraud, who was working with another hacker who just got arrested, going under the name of Hush Puppy. They were working together, and now Mumfa is free and out because again he paid $250,000 to the Nigerian government and was able to get out scot-free. I know EFCC is doing a lot of work on the fraud and everything, but again, it's something where a lot of locals are going to need to start going after the Yahoo boys and kind of calling out that crime to your local law enforcement and kind of say, hey, it's something where you guys are doing this, you need to stop. I know baked into the culture, a lot of times this type of fraud is seen as a good thing. But again, how many times have we seen a victim that lost their entire livelihood because of this type of fraud? And again, a lot of people justify it as reparation and other things like that as trying to steal money from the white man, as a lot of them say. But again, it's like they'll go and try and steal that money, but it's something where there's a lot of people losing their lives, and there's a lot of people have a lot of damage done because of this. Yeah. It's very unfortunate that that's the excuse that a lot of them use, and it's like that's just wrong to be able to go and steal money from people like that.
Yeah. I want to say thanks to Josh Johnson for the super chat. If you have a question, let us know. Alicia wants to know how many scams you get daily. Me, I probably get like one a week in my spam folder, but I get dozens and dozens of people who forward me their scam emails. Some of them are suspicious, and some of them have already fallen for the thing. So I see a ton of them. But you do this, but I also have 2 other jobs. This is your full-time job, Rodney.
Yep.
You look at scams all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
How many do you see a day?
So one of the things that we do is we actually engage with the actors on a daily basis, and we try and gain intelligence from them. We actually just hit our 10,000th engagement like a week or 2 back.
What do you mean engagement? Do you do my thing and pretend to be a dumb victim and play along?
Yep. And we'll go ahead and we'll usually respond back and kind of try and get information out of them. And when I say engagement, that's not necessarily like one email. That's 10,000 threaded emails of engagements with them. So I think that's been going for almost a year and a half now. But yeah, we engage with them every single day to try and figure out who they are, where they're coming from, and try and work with other institutions and organizations in order to pass the intelligence over to them to actually get ahead of this fraud. Because again, a lot of people are losing money on that, and there's a lot of damage going on for this.
Well, how successful are you? Are you? Because once money leaves the United States and goes to Nigeria, it's gone. Mm-hmm. The FBI can't walk into Nigeria and take it back. Like, have you ever been able to retrieve money, or are you just okay? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of success in retrieving money. A lot of the way that the money gets retrieved is it's essentially how quickly that victim lets the person know. So the sooner that the victim lets law enforcement know that they were victimized, the sooner that the higher the chances of getting that money back. Usually, if you can get it within 3 days, there's usually a good amount of success being able to get the money back. So it's something where that is usually where they may have to call banks in order to recall international wires and stuff like that. But again, there is something where there is a lot of success in doing that.
Cool. Thanks, Martin, for the super chat. Joel and Chico Ordery. Those are my friends from Cameroon and Liberia. They're great. I talk to them regularly. Look for more updates on both of those very soon. Let's find I was going to show you something. I was just looking at my phone.
Okay.
And I am part of a secret group. I've told you about this, but I'm on Telegram, and I'm part of a secret group. There's like 4,000 members. There's 4,000 Yahoo boys in this group, and they don't know that I'm in here, but I'm watching them. I'm looking for my opportunity to pounce. But one of the big scams that they're all bragging about right here is the I think you brought this up a little bit, is that the United States is looking for ways to give relief funds for the COVID 19. They were giving taxpayers $1,200 to kind of get them through this downtime, and somehow these guys have figured out how to claim to be Americans and take that money, and somehow I cannot figure out how they're doing it. You've looked into this a little bit, but they're somehow getting access to those relief funds and somehow getting it sent to them through Bitcoin. And I've been wanting to make a video on this. I just don't know how to do it. Like, tell us about how that works from what you've seen. How are they getting relief funds meant for taxpayers sent to Nigeria?
Sure. So when I say this and everything, there's multiple ways that they're doing it. So I'm just going to talk on the perspective and the angle that we saw. So what we saw Scattered Canary doing was they were using green dot cards, and what they would do is they would go.
What's Scattered Canary? For those.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, because I know I've mentioned that several times. So Scattered Canary is a Nigerian fraudster group that we attract, and we initially got tipped off to them doing business email compromise. And for that group, we were able to track back over a decade of crime. So they were doing things like they were going after disaster relief funds. They were doing romance scams. We saw them doing check fraud. They were going after small business loans. They were again doing the BEC fraud. They were doing multiple types of crime. And when we were looking at them, this was really kind of our first insight, if you will, into Nigerian fraud. And that's where we were able to understand that the business email compromise that we were tracking, that started roughly around 2015. It was a little bit before that. But once that started, that wasn't just a single thing that we started seeing in the industry. That was actually a symptom of something else. And that's where we get into the 419 scams, and the other things before that. And specifically to Scattered Canary, they were doing this type of fraud for over a decade. So specific to Scattered Canary and specific to this group, what we saw them doing is they were using green dot cards in order to attack. And the way that they would do it is they would use the addresses and social security numbers and names of people. They would go apply for the unemployment benefits. Once they applied for the unemployment benefits, they would then say, hey, I want to go ahead and put that on a green dot card. Once they got that on the green dot card, the card would be sent to the victim. And as that was in transit in the mail, the attacker would receive an email that kind of said, hey, here's your bank account and routing number associated with your green dot card. So what we think they were doing was as that card was in transit, they were taking that money out of the accounts before that made it to the victim. And the victims who would get the checks who would get the cards in the mail, they would see and be like, why am I getting this card in the mail? And most of the time they would throw it away. So there was a really big influx of people just randomly receiving green dot cards that they never really applied for. So there was just a lot of people, there were a lot of people who saw that. The other way a lot of them were using is they were using Cash App in order to wire money back and forth. I know that there's a lot of other people working that. I'm not actively working on the Cash App side, but I know a lot of scammers are very actively using that as a payment and a cash out method for a lot of their scams.
Well, Ronnie, why don't you just arrest these guys if you know who they are?
So
Virginia wants to know.
Yeah. So the reason that a lot of them aren't arrested is because it's hard to get law enforcement to in order to build cases. So, and I know another question was, what's the lifestyle of a case? So I'll go ahead and describe some of that. So the initial lifestyle of these cases is, in order for people to arrest somebody, in order for law enforcement to arrest somebody, you have to have a victim. So with the way that we capture a lot of the stuff, a lot of our intelligence, we don't necessarily have a victim in a lot of cases. So it's something where we have to try and figure out who the victim is in those cases. Once law enforcement then builds that case and they have that victim, they now have to go and gather information such as the email accounts, phone numbers, bank accounts, and all this other information in order to build up that picture. In order to get that information, they have to use a subpoena, and with a subpoena, that's where they can go to a private company and say, hey, I need you to give me all this information that you have on this email account and tell me all the login information. When that comes back, that can be upwards of 30 days for just one email account. So then if you get that information back and you have to go back, that's another 30 days you have to wait. So in order to build these cases for law enforcement, it takes a lot of time to do that. So on the private side, we can identify a lot of these perpetrators who are doing this stuff. But again, a lot of what it comes down to is trying to build that case and work with law enforcement to go after a lot of them. For a lot of the ones who were located in Nigeria, EFCC is doing a lot of good work out there, don't get me wrong. But again, they're very, very strained on resources. So it's something where a lot of people are strained on those resources. Additionally, a lot of law enforcement who's looking at this, it's a very complex web in how a lot of these things happen. So earlier I mentioned that one victim who had sent the $15,000 in cash to in a FedEx box. So that ended up, so the check was sent from one state. That check then hit Tennessee. That check in Tennessee went to the victim in Texas. That Texas victim now had to send that FedEx box to Rogers, Arkansas. So now you have 4 different states and 4 different jurisdictions that now have that. So now, who's the victim here? Is your romance victim the victim, or are they now facilitating that? Is the person who got the money in Arkansas, are they the victim, or are they just facilitating it? How about the person who initially sent the check? Now you have is that person the victim? So trying to figure jurisdiction for a lot of these international crimes becomes very difficult, and the scammers know that. And that's how that's how they're doing it, is they know that there's a lot of limitations on that, so they're intentionally skirting a lot of those laws, making it difficult to detect. Because again, they want to keep running the fraud and not be caught.
Yeah, what was the recent kind of bust that the FBI was able to pull off? It's like 19 scammers got arrested. I can't remember if that was. It was recent in the news. A lot of people were asking me about it.
I have to go back and look at that one. That one doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
I know the most recent high-profile one was Hush Puppy, who got arrested. I know he was very popular on Instagram, and would commonly flaunt all his money. And he was very much a big fan of Gucci products and nice cars.
And so he was brought down by the Nigerian government or the United States government, or a collaboration.
So Hush Puppy was arrested in Dubai for $35 million worth of fraud, and then he was extradited here to the States on additional charges. So I think in total it's upwards of like $250 million that he's facing right now. And when they did forensics on his laptop, in Dubai, they found 1.9 million victims tied directly to Hush Puppy.
Hey, here's a question from Evan. I used to work for a bank, and while there were fraud prevention initiatives in place, more needs to be done. What role do financial institutions have to play in preventing fraud, and what should they do? What do you think?
So specific to financial institutions, that also becomes difficult too, because again, going back to the $15,000 example, when that person goes into the bank, they have a legitimate check, they're telling a legitimate story, but everything that they're telling you, you know in your gut that something is wrong, something isn't right, something isn't adding up. So it's something where, for a lot of the banks and financial institutions, it becomes very difficult for a lot of these cases, because you'll have instances where you'll have somebody screaming on the other line, no, I'm actually trying to send this money, you need to go ahead and send this money, even though the other person on the banker is like, no, this is a fraudulent transfer, you're probably going to be calling me back here in an hour saying, hey, I need that money reversed. So it's something where it's not necessarily my problem or your problem, it's something where it's all of our problems and we need to work together on that. And it's something where very much with the financial institutions, it's something where it becomes a very difficult problem to try and address.
Do you work with? Let's look at Daniel's question. does the police take you guys seriously when you give them info about scammers? Do you typically work with FBI or local police, or who are you typically involved with?
So for me, I do a lot of collaboration with FBI. I don't do as much with the local police because the cases that are at the local level are usually under many layers of obfuscation for trying to figure out how it works. And usually, when you have it at the local level, you may see just one little piece of, as opposed to seeing that bigger picture. When working with the FBI, we have a good relationship with several field offices. We have a lot of good relationship with them on the Agari side. So whenever we go to them, they're usually likely to listen to us. But again, it's something where we've built that rapport over several years. I know I've been collaborating with law enforcement since 2013 or 14, I want to say. And again, this was over different cases too that I gotten pulled into. So working with law enforcement, I know they listen to us, but again, if you have a victim who goes to your local police officer, it's a lot of times that victim feels like they're not being listened to. So that's a problem because a lot of times at the local level they aren't really addressed or helped. And the other thing too, when you have that local PD who's doing that fraud. They don't have the resources to go after the big Nigerian fraudsters and everything. So now, does that information get reported up to the right authorities? I want to say yes, but I really don't know. So it's something where it's a very complex issue, and there's a lot of moving pieces to that. And more people need to be aware of it and understand how it is. And just again, it's very much one of those things where there's a lot of pieces going on and a lot of moving things. Everyone kind of needs to work together in order to address this as a whole.
Cool. Yeah, I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get your question before we're done, go ahead and throw it in. But here's a comment that I thought was interesting. Maybe you want to talk to this one, Ronnie. Ibrahim is a Nigerian. He hates scammers. He says, but your citizens support them. They help them. They send them money, and they get a certain percentage from the scammed money. Mm-hmm. That is true in many cases. You said that sometimes it's because they're victims. But do you know of anybody like kids or people who are knowingly involved in Nigerian scams? They are knowingly working as money mules and mm-hmm. helping out.
Yep. So when it comes to mules who move money for scammers, you have two types of mule. You have a mule who has no idea what they're doing, and that's what we call an unwitting mule. Then you have a mule who knows what they're doing is wrong, and that's called a witting mule. And for them, there are both sides of that. In many cases, it may be somebody who has a previous relationship with the scammer where they're trying to send the money and they may actually be getting a cut of it. A lot of cases with the romance victims, whenever they're sending money, they will get a small cut of that too. But again, they aren't able to see through what they're doing as actually being fraud. So for a lot of them, it's something where they may not see that and be able to say, hey, this is fraud, this isn't fraud. But yeah, there are a lot of different types of mules who are doing that type of work.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you were telling me one example about a guy who was a romance victim mm-hmm. and a money mule.
Yep.
So he not only did he lose money, but he helped move money, and then he got arrested. Mm-hmm. Like that's the worst.
Yeah, and it's like for me, he was one of those ones where he was straight up an unwitting mule by all definitions, because it's like he's sending pictures of his food to this suspected person that he was in a relationship with. He even had a preference of like what type of dress the person he thought he was in a relationship was in, and he was like he liked one style of dress over another. So it was something where with all that and everything, yeah, they very much unfortunately a lot of these victims can't really see through it, and they don't understand that what they're doing is wrong. But again, it's not necessarily on the onus isn't necessarily on the victim in that case, because a lot of people will just take things at face value, and they're like, oh, and a lot of them are just very trusting of people.
Cool. Hey, one of our last questions is from Daniel. Again, he says, I have had calls from American law firms saying I owe a debt from 2008. I've got these same calls. I've looked into these a little bit. Mm-hmm. And every time they call, it's a different amount, the same debt. They are American. Are they scammers? Or yeah, I've had these too. And mm-hmm. I think they're American. Tell us what you know about this, but I think these are American-based scams because mm-hmm. They're clearly not Nigerian actors on the phone. Yeah. Do you know anything about this?
A little bit. I haven't done much tracking on them, but I do know a little bit about them. So the way these usually work is a lot of times if you had like a debt, for example, that will be sold from one debt collecting agency to the other. And as that goes through different places, the debt is usually purchased for like pennies on the dollar. And a lot of times they'll try and just continue badgering you until you pay that money and everything. Some of the cases I've seen, it's usually something where they'll say, "Hey, you may owe $2,500, but if you go and get me $250 worth of gift cards, we'll go ahead and settle the debt." That's absolute garbage. That's a scam. Don't do those and everything. Usually, when somebody says, "Hey, I'm part of this law firm," I will look the number of the law firm up, make sure they're legit, and then call that number back, as opposed to just returning the call right on the phone, because it's very easy to spoof. It's very easy to spoof a phone call and to spoof who a call is really coming from.
Yeah, I did a video about this on my channel. You can go look it up. But I basically called the law center and I just played stupid. And I'm like, I'm calling because my grandpa got a call. And they're like, "Oh, what's your grandpa's name?" And I said his name. And they're like, is it your grandpa who lives at this address and has this birthday?" I'm like, what law firm is just going to give that kind of info?
Exactly.
So you could do things like that to kind of see if they're full of it or not.
Yep. Only a bad law firm would do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Casey. Once again, what we're doing today, and we're about to wrap up here, but we're talking about Nigerian fraud. A lot of it does come from Nigeria, not all of it, but some of it does. And unfortunately, it's really created a bad stigma and reputation for good, honest, hardworking people in Nigeria. And so what we're doing today with all these super chats is we're going to give the money to Ronnie here, because he's got some folks on the ground over there that are doing good work. They're trying to build a little think tank, kind of a school education center to help Nigerian youth develop their skills to use them in honest ways. And so thanks to all of those of you who have asked questions and donated. We've been able to raise a good chunk of change here today that we're going to send his way and get that thing going. And hopefully that's how we improve things going forward. Any final thoughts, Ronnie? What do we need to know about, what have we missed? What do there's scammers watching this video right now. I know they do. Yeah. I get emails from scammers who watch my content, and I've got people who are living in Nigeria and they're wondering, how else am I going to feed my family? There's nothing for me to do. And then there's just Americans over here who have been scammed or who are just super curious about this topic. What do all these people need to know? You'll have the final word here for us.
All right, cool. Sounds good. So I would say the biggest thing is that with a lot of the scammers who are seeing this and who are watching this, you guys think that there aren't victims out there. You guys think that what you're doing is just trying to make one person a fool because they fell for a trick. And a lot of the scammers that I've seen actually feel like there are no victims, that it's a victimless crime. I have personally had to sit on the phone making small talk with people who are talking about dogs, because I know the second I hang that phone up, they're going to be back in tears because they were scammed. I've had to talk with people who, again, have been in it for a complete decade, who have lost their completely livelihoods, who have lost homes, and there's been cases where I've seen suicide as a direct result of this. People are losing their lives because of a lot of scammers who are doing this. And it's something where, with a lot of the people on the ground who are doing this, they see this and they're like, and a lot of them will do these blood sacrifices. So to them, human life isn't necessarily as valuable as like people here in the States may value, but that's absolutely not true in everything. It's something where all life is valuable regardless of race, color, location, or anything like that. So it's something where, for all the people in Nigeria who are watching this, a lot of us here in the States are really trying to help you guys out. And we're trying to do right and make it to where you guys have good opportunities. If you're looking for opportunities, there are a ton of things that you could do online. Making websites, learning a coding language, doing things on Fiverr in order to go ahead and do small jobs like that and everything. So it's possible to actually make a living online without being a fraudster. Make a YouTube video talking about some of the things that you want to do and everything, because again, that's a positive revenue stream. So there are all these things that you could do online without having to scam somebody. For the people who are watching this who were victims, my heart goes out to you. I know the pain that it goes through, that you guys have gone through for a lot of these things, and it really, 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 really sucks. And the biggest thing is that a lot of the victims feel like they aren't listened to. But again, there's a lot of people who are actually fighting for you guys in order to help make this good and everything, who's trying to help make it right. So it's something where don't stop fighting, keep passing the information over, and again, hopefully things will be getting better here and here eventually. Again, there's a lot of people who's trying to fight this stuff and trying to make it to where it's a happy ending for everybody, and not just for the victims here in the States who lost all the money, but also for the victims in Nigeria who the Yahoo boys have went and given you guys this bad reputation. And it's something where not all Nigerians are scammers, I'll straight up say that. And it's really sucks that the Yahoo boys have spent the last 2 decades giving you guys this bad name. But it's something where now, for the Nigerians who are watching this, the onus is now on you. So now you got to start calling out this type of crime. You have to start calling out these Yahoo boys for this stuff. When you have somebody who will go and give you a new Toyota or buy you a new car, that's blood money at that point. That's something where you have victims who had lost their lives, victims who had lost their livelihoods. And every time a Yahoo boy goes and gives you money or buys something, or buys a new club, or buys a new house or something with that, that's money that came out of somebody's mouth, and especially on the unemployment fraud side. That's just absolutely disgusting right now. Is that when I go and see the scammers actually doing that, it's something where they're straight up stealing from the Americans who need the money the most. They've also gone after the COVID relief funds. They've also gone after CARES Act. It's just straight up wrong. It's like you try and pull something to be a Robin Hood that you're doing good, but no, it's beyond that. It's disgusting at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, cool. I hope this has been helpful for all of those who've watched and joined the live stream, and those of you who will watch this as soon as I post it. Yes, I'll keep this live. It'll be up if you want to go back and watch it. Hopefully it helps. If you like this type of content, please let me know in the comments, and we'll do more of it. Maybe we'll bring Ronnie on some more and just chat about Nigerian fraud or other types of fraud. Ronnie could talk about this till he loses his breath. He loves this type of stuff.
Yeah, I know I was telling you earlier and everything. It's like I could seriously talk for like 3 hours straight on this stuff with just like an open microphone. So it's something where there is just so much of this stuff going on that we didn't even touch on. The check fraud, the puppy scams, the Cameroonian fraud, different things happening in Ghana, Kenya, the Malaysian side of things, everything. I mean, there are so many avenues of this type of fraud that just aren't being covered right now. But it's very complex with how all this stuff works.
Yeah. Okay, well, cool. Well, if you want to see more of the Ben and Ronnie show, then let us know in the comments, and we'll do this again, because this has been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you, Ronnie. And
it sucked. It was hard.
Hopefully it's been fun for everybody else. So
I would say it gets one sticker cat from me. So.
Oh, there we go. Very good. And the fans love the ears. So just want to thank Alicia Pollock. You gave us a couple bucks, so you get a shout out. Stone Wolf, appreciate your support. Daniel, that was very generous of you, so I really appreciate that. Hopefully this makes a difference. I'm going to send this over to Ronnie as soon as Google pays me. And hopefully it makes a difference over there in Nigeria. But this has been really fun. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. And I've got some more, of my traditional videos of the, fun scams that I've been running into. I've got some crazy stories that I want to share with you. So be sure to stick around for the next video that I've got coming out soon. And we'll catch you all later. Have a good one.
Take care, y'all.